In 1917, a cafe in Corinth, Mississippi, stretched a beef patty with flour, fried it in lard, and sold it for a nickel. Railroad men bought 2 at a time. Today, 3 restaurants on Earth still make it. Number 14 put peanut butter on a hamburger, and everyone who tried it never ordered anything else again. And number 3 depends on a bread roll that bakers outside one city refuse to make. You asked for more. Here are 25 more sandwiches America forgot. Subscribe and let us count them down. Number 25. The ketchup sandwich was the meal nobody photographed and everybody ate. During the worst years of the Depression, mothers spread Heinz ketchup on white bread, pressed a second slice on top, and handed it to a child who did not ask what else there was, because there was nothing else. A bottle of ketchup cost 19 cents in 1933 and lasted 2 weeks if you were careful. The sugar and vinegar soaked into the bread and turned it pink and sweet and faintly sharp, and children in Detroit, Buffalo, and Birmingham ate it at kitchen tables with the lights off to save on the electric bill. Some families toasted the bread first, which made it feel like cooking. When the war economy brought paychecks back, the ketchup sandwich disappeared overnight, buried by the same families who had lived on it. Nobody wrote the recipe down because nobody wanted to remember needing it. But an entire generation crossed the hardest decade in American history on bread and ketchup. And that deserves to be said out loud at least once. Number 24. The onion sandwich was so simple it embarrassed people, and so good that James Beard, the father of American food writing, called a version of it his favorite thing to eat. Thick slices of sweet onion between 2 pieces of soft white bread, spread heavy with butter or mayonnaise and hit with a pinch of salt. That was the whole architecture. Farm hands across the Midwest ate them in the shade of hay wagons through the 1930s and 1940s because an onion cost 2 cents and kept in a cellar for months. The bite of the raw onion against the fat of the butter created a balance that no engineered snack food has ever matched. Beard dressed his up with chopped parsley and served it at Manhattan cocktail parties. And rich people paid for what farm families had been eating free for 50 years. Then breath became a national obsession, and the onion sandwich was quietly voted out of American life for the crime of being honest. Number 23. The banana and mayonnaise sandwich sounds like a dare to anyone born after 1980, but across the South, it was childhood itself. Sliced ripe banana laid across white bread spread with Duke's mayonnaise, sometimes cut into triangles, sometimes eaten folded in half over the sink. Bananas flooded into Gulf ports on refrigerated ships in the 1930s and became one of the cheapest fruits in America, 4 cents a pound in 1939. Cheaper than apples grown 1 state away. The creamy tang of the mayonnaise against the sweet banana created something rich and cool and strangely complete. Mill workers in the Carolinas packed them in lunch buckets. Grandmothers made them for children on porches in August because they required no stove in a kitchen already hot enough to bend candles. The combination never made sense on paper, which is why it never survived the age of national advertising. Nobody could sell it, so nobody defended it. But ask anyone raised in Georgia or Alabama before 1965 and watch their face change. That is not nostalgia. That is a taste that built a childhood. Number 22. The peanut butter and pickle sandwich appeared in American cookbooks as early as the 1930s and stayed in working-class lunchboxes for 40 years. Dill pickle slices pressed into a thick layer of peanut butter on white or whole wheat bread. The crunch and salt and sourness of the pickle cutting straight through the dense richness of the peanut butter. It reads like a pregnancy craving and eats like a discovery. A jar of peanut butter cost 23 cents in 1936. A jar of pickles cost 15 cents. The sandwich delivered protein, fat, and enough flavor contrast to make a person forget it cost less than a dime. Depression-era home economists actually recommended it in newspaper columns as a meat substitute, and families kept making it long after they could afford meat because it was simply good. It faded when lunch became something you bought instead of something you packed. Every few years, a food writer rediscovers it and announces it like a new planet. The lunch pails of Toledo knew about that planet 90 years ago. Number 21. The apple butter sandwich was autumn in Appalachia pressed between two slices of bread. Every fall, families gathered around copper kettles in yards from western Pennsylvania down through the Virginias, stirring bushels of apples with wooden paddles for 10 and 12 hours until the fruit cooked down into a dark, concentrated spread the color of mahogany. That apple butter, spiced with cinnamon and sometimes a splash of cider vinegar, went into crocks and carried families through the winter, spread thick on white bread or a split biscuit, sometimes with a smear of butter underneath. It was breakfast, lunch, and after school all at once. A crock of homemade apple butter cost nothing but a day of community labor, and that labor was the point. Neighbors took turns at the paddle. Children fell asleep to the smell. When commercial apple butter arrived in jars, thin and oversweetened, the kettle days ended one hollow at a time, and the sandwich went out with the people who knew that some food is supposed to take all day. Number 20. The date nut bread and cream cheese sandwich was New York City lunch for 3 decades, and it belonged to chock full of nuts. Starting in the 1930s, the lunch counter chain served a sandwich of dense, dark date nut bread, spread with plain cream cheese. And by the 1950s, it was selling them by the hundreds of thousands to secretaries, shop clerks, and stockbrokers standing elbow to elbow at counters across Manhattan. The sandwich cost a nickel at the start and never got expensive. The sweetness of the dates and the toasted walnuts against the cool, slightly sour cream cheese created a rhythm people ordered 3 times a week without ever getting tired of it. The bread was baked dense enough that one sandwich held a person until dinner. When the counters began closing in the 1970s and 1980s, replaced by pizza slices and fast food registers, the sandwich lost its home, and the company that made it became a coffee brand on a shelf. Millions of New Yorkers ate this sandwich for 30 years. Almost none of their grandchildren have ever heard of it. Number 19. The Benedictine sandwich was Louisville, Kentucky, wearing its Sunday best. Around the turn of the century, a caterer named Jenny Benedict began mixing cream cheese with cucumber juice and grated onion, tinting it the palest green, and spreading it on soft white bread with the crusts removed. The result was cool, delicate, and quietly addictive, the taste of a screened porch in May. For 60 years, no derby party, bridal luncheon, or church reception in Kentucky happened without a silver tray of Benedictine sandwiches cut into fingers. The spread cost pennies to make. Cream cheese was 12 cents a block in the 1940s, and cucumbers came from the garden. But it tasted like wealth, and that was the trick. Women passed the recipe down like jewelry, arguing over whether real Benedictine needed a drop of green food coloring or whether that was vulgar. Outside Kentucky, almost nobody has ever tasted it. Inside Kentucky, it is fading to 1 week a year, hauled out for Derby and put away again, a sandwich on life support in its own hometown. Number 18. The frosted sandwich loaf was the most ambitious thing the American housewife ever built, and it has vanished so completely that most people refuse to believe it existed. Picture an entire loaf of unsliced white bread cut lengthwise into layers, each layer spread with a different filling. Ham salad on one, egg salad on the next, olive nut on the third. The layers were stacked back into a loaf, and then the whole thing was frosted, top and sides, with whipped cream cheese until it looked exactly like a cake. It was chilled, garnished with radish roses and parsley, carried to the table whole, and sliced in front of guests who gasped on cue. From the 1940s through the mid-1960s, this was the centerpiece of every bridal shower and ladies' luncheon in America. It cost maybe $2 in ingredients and 8 hours of labor, and that labor was the language it was written in. When women went to work, nobody had 8 hours for a sandwich anymore. The loaf did not fade. It fell off a cliff. Here is where things take a turn. Every sandwich so far died at home, in kitchens and church basements and lunch counters. The next stretch of this list died somewhere else. These were sandwiches with names, with addresses, with neon signs out front. They were invented by immigrants and small-town cooks who built something singular, watched it thrive for decades, and then watched national chains with television budgets teach their own customers to want less. Remember that as we count down, nobody stopped loving these sandwiches. They were outspent. Number 17. The Limburger and onion sandwich was the official lunch of the Wisconsin Tavern, and it announced itself before the door finished opening. Thick-cut Limburger, the famously pungent cheese German and Swiss immigrants brought to the upper Midwest in the 1880s, was laid on dark rye with a slab of raw onion and a swipe of brown mustard, and served with a beer that was not optional. In 1950, taverns from Milwaukee to Monroe sold it for 20 cents, and factory men ate it at the bar rail with the confidence of people who had nothing to prove. The cheese was creamy and beefy under its intimidating smell, and against the sour rye and sharp onion, it became something almost noble. Then, post-war America decided food should smell like nothing, and Limburger became a cartoon punchline, laughed at by a generation that never tasted it. Today, exactly one cheesemaker in the United States still produces Limburger in Monroe, Wisconsin, and one tavern nearby still serves the sandwich the old way. One. That is what remains of an entire culture's lunch. Number 16. The chipped ham barbecue was Pittsburgh's sandwich, and Pittsburgh built more of this country than almost any city on the map. In 1933, the Isali's dairy chain began shaving its chopped ham on a slicer set so thin the meat came off in ruffled tissue paper sheets they called chipped chopped ham. Piled loose on a soft bun and simmered in a sweet, tangy tomato barbecue sauce, it became the ham barbecue, the default Saturday lunch of the entire Steel Valley. A pound of chipped ham cost 39 cents in the 1950s and stretched across a family of 6 because the shave was so thin it doubled in volume. Steel workers ate them before shifts. Mothers made them for birthday parties. Isali's counters, with their skyscraper ice cream cones, were the living rooms of 100-mill towns. Then the mills closed. The chain collapsed store by store through the 1970s and the 1980s, and the golden arches moved into the empty lots. Pittsburgh grocery delis still chip ham for the faithful, but a sandwich that once defined a region now survives as a regional secret, and secrets do not get passed down forever. Number 15. The slugburger was born in Corinth, Mississippi, around 1917. When a cafe owner started stretching ground beef with flour and later soy grits, pressing the mixture into thin patties, and deep frying them in lard until the edges went crisp as a cracker. Served on a small bun with mustard, pickle, and onion, it sold for a nickel, and the local slang for a nickel was a slug. Through the Depression and 2 wars, slugburgers fed railroad workers and factory hands across northeast Mississippi, 5 cents at a time. The extender was not the compromise. The extender was the invention. That crisp, savory, fried patty tasted like itself, not like a lesser hamburger, and people who grew up on it craved it over pure beef for the rest of their lives. Today, a small handful of cafes in and around Corinth still fry them, and the town throws a slugburger festival every July, defending a nickel sandwich like a monument, because that is what it is. Number 14. The goober burger might be the strangest sandwich ever beloved by an American town, and Sedalia, Missouri loved it for 60 years. At the Wheel-In Drive-In, opened in the 1940s, cooks grilled a hamburger patty and then, while it was still hot, spread it with creamy peanut butter that melted into a warm, salty sweet sauce, then finished it with lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise. Goober is old slang for peanut, and the Goober burger became the house legend. Every skeptic who ordered one under protest came back the next week and ordered two. The melted peanut butter behaved like a rich sauté sauce decades before most Americans had heard the word, deepening the beef instead of fighting it. The Missouri State Fair crowd kept the parking lot full every August. Then the interstate rerouted traffic, the fast food strip did what it does, and in 2007, the Wheel-In closed after 6 decades. Revival attempts flickered and went dark. A sandwich a whole town could describe from memory now exists mostly in memory. Number 13. The cheese Frenchie was Nebraska's gift to the deep fryer, and it may be the best sandwich on this list that you can no longer buy on a street corner. A grilled cheese was built with American cheese and a whisper of mayonnaise, cut into triangles, dipped in an egg batter, rolled in crushed cornflakes, and deep fried until the outside shattered and the inside ran molten. It was the signature of King's Food Host, a Lincoln-born chain where you ordered by picking up a telephone at your booth. And by the early 1970s, King's had grown to more than 150 locations across 17 states. A Frenchie cost about 60 cents. Children begged for them. Teenagers dated over them. The crunch of that cornflake crust giving way to hot cheese was a sound an entire region grew up on. Then the chain overextended. National fast food undercut it on speed and to price. And by the late 1970s, King's was gone. A couple of surviving restaurants in Nebraska still fry Frenchies for pilgrims. Everywhere else, one of the most beloved regional sandwiches in American history simply blinked out. Stop and sit with that one, because the Frenchie tells you how this actually happened. King's had the loyal customers. King's had a sandwich people still drive hundreds of miles for, 50 years later. And it did not matter, because the fight was never about food. It was about real estate, franchise financing, and 30-second television spots, and the national chains had all three. Every sandwich remaining on this list survived longer than the Frenchie for one reason only. It dug in behind a city that refused to let go. Number 12. The runza came across the ocean twice before it became Nebraskan. Germans who had settled along the Volga River in Russia carried their bierok, a yeast bread pocket stuffed with seasoned ground beef, cabbage, and onion, to the American plains in the 1870s. On wheat farms across Nebraska and Kansas, mothers baked pans of them every week. The sealed bread pocket was a lunch a man could carry into a field in his coat, still warm at noon. No plate, no fork, no waste. The filling steamed inside the dough as it baked, so the bread soaked up beef and sweet cabbage from the inside out. Church bake sales sold them by the hundred at a dime apiece. Then, in 1949, a Lincoln family began selling them commercially, and today one chain in one state keeps the name alive. But the homemade version, the pans coming out of farm ovens, the grandmothers pinching dough with flour to their elbows, is nearly extinct. The sandwich survived. The tradition that made it did not, and those are not the same thing. Number 11. The Spiedie belongs to Binghamton, New York, and Binghamton would like a word with everyone who has never heard of it. Italian immigrants in the 1930s took cubes of lamb, marinated them for days in oil, vinegar, garlic, and a fistful of herbs, grilled them on skewers over charcoal, and then slid the skewer off directly into a folded slice of soft Italian bread. The bread was the plate, the napkin, and the glove all at once. You gripped, pulled, and the meat came free into the bread, soaked with char and marinade. Factory workers at the shoe plants ate them from carts. Backyards across the Triple Cities smelled like vinegar and smoke every summer weekend, and every family guarded a marinade recipe like a deed. A spiedie sandwich cost 35 cents in the 1950s. The city still holds a spiedie festival, and locals still argue lamb versus pork versus chicken with real anger, but drive 90 minutes in any direction and the word means nothing. A sandwich this good, staying trapped in one valley for 90 years, is not a quirk of geography. It is proof that America stopped paying attention. Number 10. The steamed cheeseburger sounds like a mistake and eats like a revelation, and it has been hiding in Meriden, Connecticut since the 1930s. Lunch carts serving factory workers cooked burgers not on a griddle but in tall steel steam cabinets, each patty in its own small tray alongside trays holding blocks of sharp Vermont cheddar. The steam cooked the beef gently, keeping every drop of juice inside, and turned the cheddar into molten lava that was poured, not laid, over the patty on a hard roll. No crust, no char, just impossibly tender beef drowning in real melted cheese. It cost 15 cents during the war years and fed men working 10-hour shifts at the silver factories. The style never spread past a 20-mile circle because steam cabinets were custom-built and griddles were cheap, and fast food is a griddle religion. A few Meriden institutions still steam them daily for regulars who have been ordering the same lunch for 50 years. When those regulars go, Connecticut will find out whether a sandwich can outlive its congregation. Number 9. The dynamite sandwich was built by French-Canadian mill families in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and it was engineered for a crowd. Ground beef simmered for hours with onions, bell peppers, celery, and tomato, seasoned with enough crushed red pepper to earn the name, then ladled hot and dripping into a torpedo roll. It looks like a sloppy Joe, the way a wolf looks like a dog. The long simmer melted the peppers and onions into the meat until the whole filling became one rich, spicy, slightly sweet gravy that soaked into the roll and forced you to eat leaning forward. Women made them by the roasting pan for church fundraisers and political rallies. And in Woonsocket, elections were won by whoever bought the most dynamites for the crowd. They sold for a quarter in the 1950s. The textile mills closed. The parishes merged. The halls went quiet. And the dynamite retreated to a handful of family kitchens and 1 or 2 lunch counters. A sandwich built for a room full of people struggles to survive in a country that eats alone in cars. Number 8. The mother-in-law is Chicago at its most defiantly strange. Take a corn roll tamale, the mild, cornmeal-wrapped Chicago style sold from carts since the 1920s, lay it in a hot dog bun, and bury it in chili. Add onions, mustard, sport peppers, whatever the stand had. It is a carbohydrate wearing a carbohydrate, covered in meat, and on the South Side, it was the working man's dinner for half a century. The tamale turned soft and custardy under the hot chili. The bun collapsed into the whole thing, and the sport peppers lit the roof of your mouth on the way out. Nobody agrees on the name. The best theory is that, like a mother-in-law, it shows up uninvited and takes over. It cost 30 cents at mid-century stands, sold through sliding windows to men coming off shifts at the mills. Today it survives at a tiny handful of South Side stands. The rest of the city drives past toward a drive-through, never knowing their own hometown invented something no other city on earth has. Number 7. The pig ear sandwich has been served at the Big Apple Inn on Farish Street in Jackson, Mississippi since the 1930s, and it carries more American history per square inch than any sandwich alive. Pig ears, bought for next to nothing because nobody else wanted them, were pressure cooked for hours until the cartilage turned silky and tender, then sliced, laid on a small steamed bun, and dressed with slaw, mustard, and hot sauce. It sold for a dime. Farish Street was then one of the great black business districts of the South, and the Big Apple Inn fed its barbers, teachers, and tailors. Upstairs, above the smell of simmering ears, Medgar Evers kept his NAACP field office, and civil rights organizers planned over sandwiches that cost 10 cents, because 10 cents was what the neighborhood had. The ear itself is soft, rich, and mild, a texture America has forgotten how to love. Urban renewal and highway construction gutted Farish Street like they gutted black main streets across the country. The Big Apple Inn still stands, fourth generation, still serving ears. It is nearly the last of its entire world. Read that last one again, because it is the pattern under this whole list. So many of these sandwiches were invented by people locked out of the front door of the American economy. Immigrants, mill hands, black entrepreneurs working with the cuts nobody else wanted and turning them into food people lined up for. When the highways came through, when the mills closed, when the lunch counters lost to the franchise, it was never just a menu that disappeared. It was the neighborhood, the ownership, the proof of what those communities built. Fast food did not just kill sandwiches, it paved over the evidence. Number 6. The turkey Devonshire was Pittsburgh's second great sandwich, invented in 1934 by restaurateur Frank Blandy and named after the street his club sat on. Sliced roast turkey was laid over toast, crossed with crisp bacon, flooded with a rich cheddar cream sauce, dusted with more cheese and paprika, and broiled until the top blistered gold. It was a knife and fork sandwich, a first cousin of Louisville's hot brown, and for 40 years it was on the menu of every white tablecloth restaurant and department store tea room in western Pennsylvania. Ladies ordered it after shopping at Kaufmann's. Businessmen ordered it at lunch and did nothing useful for the rest of the afternoon. A proper Devonshire demanded a real roux, real cheddar, and a broiler watched by a person who cared. Chains could not produce that at scale, so they stopped offering it, and the department stores that anchored it died one by one through the 1980s and 1990s. A few Pittsburgh diners still make it for the old crowd. Everyone else in America is missing one of the great hot sandwiches ever built and does not know it. Number 5. The beef Manhattan is Indiana's open-faced monument, and outside Indiana, it barely exists. Slices of slow-roasted beef laid over white bread, a scoop of mashed potatoes set beside or right on top, and the entire landscape flooded edge to edge with brown gravy. It appeared in Indianapolis around the Second World War and conquered every cafeteria, supper club, and school lunchroom in the state within a decade. This was the sandwich of the American cafeteria line at its peak. The steam tables, the trays sliding on rails, the ladies in hairnets who knew your grandfather's order. It cost 45 cents in 1955. And it kept a person full through an afternoon of real work. The bread dissolving into the gravy was not a flaw, it was the destination. When the cafeterias died, killed by food courts and drive-through speed, the beef Manhattan lost its habitat like an animal losing a forest. It hangs on in a shrinking ring of Hoosier diners and small-town cafes. A sandwich that fed a whole state for 70 years is now a regional curiosity one generation from the exit. Number 4. The Peacemaker was the sandwich that saved marriages in New Orleans, and that is not a figure of speech. In the late 1800s, a husband who had stayed out too late in the saloons of the French Quarter would stop on the way home and buy an oyster loaf, a whole small loaf of French bread, hollowed out, buttered, toasted, and packed full of fried oysters, hot and crackling. He carried it home as an offering, and the Creole name for it was La Mediatrice, the mediator, the peacemaker. Oysters were the cheap protein of the Gulf then, a dozen for a dime, dredged in cornmeal and fried in lard until the edges laced. San Francisco had its own oyster loaf tradition in the same decades, sold along the waterfront. Then oysters became expensive, fried food became a confession, and the loaf gave way to the smaller po' boy that survives today. The peacemaker itself, the whole loaf, the apology you could eat, is gone. Some traditions die. That one was dismantled. Number 3, beef on weck is the sandwich that proves geography can hoard genius, and the secret is the roll. Buffalo, New York's German bakers created the weck, a roll crusted on top with coarse pretzel salt and whole caraway seeds. Since the late 1800s, Buffalo taverns have carved slow-roasted beef rare and thin, piled it into that roll, dipped the top crown in the pan juices for exactly a moment, and served it with a pot of horseradish that means you harm. Here is the chemistry that keeps it hostage. That salt crust pulls moisture and starts softening the roll within the hour, so the weck must be baked, topped, and eaten the same day. And the sandwich only works in that narrow window when the just-dipped crust is soft, the crumb still holds, and the salt crystals still crunch against the rare beef. It cannot be trucked, warehoused, or franchised. National chains looked at a sandwich with a shelf life measured in hours and walked away. Buffalo kept it. 10 cents in 1940, a civic religion today. Everyone else got roast beef on a bun that tastes like the box it shipped in. Number 2, the fried chicken sandwich was perfected in America long before any chain claimed it, and it was perfected by black women standing beside railroad tracks in Gordonsville, Virginia. Beginning in the decades after the Civil War, formerly enslaved women built one of the first black-owned food economies in the country by frying chicken at dawn, packing it with slices of bread and pie, and selling it through the open windows of trains that stopped in town with no dining service aboard. They were called waiter carriers. They raised the chickens, fried them in lard and cast iron, and passed them up on trays to passengers who wrote about that chicken in diaries for the rest of their lives. Gordonsville became known as the chicken leg capital of the world, and those earnings bought houses, land, and educations. Then the railroads added dining cars. Health ordinances written with no seat at the table pushed the women from the platforms. And by the 1920s, the trade was gone. Every fried chicken sandwich sold in America today stands on that platform in Virginia. The billions went elsewhere. The credit should not. And number 1, the bread and butter sandwich is the plainest thing on this list. And that is exactly why it belongs at the top. 2 slices of bread, butter spread to the edges because your grandmother believed spreading it to the edges was a moral issue. Sometimes a sprinkle of sugar for a child, or a pinch of salt for a working man, and nothing else. This was the sandwich in the coal miner's pail in Pennsylvania, the mill girl's pocket in Massachusetts, the immigrant's coat on the boat, the school child's wax paper in every state for 100 years. It required no recipe, no money worth mentioning, no explanation. When butter was 30 cents a pound and bread was a dime, it fed the people who dug, welded, sewed, and raised this country, one quiet lunch at a time. It disappeared not because anyone rejected it, but because abundance made it invisible. We gained 1,000 choices and lost the taste of enough. Every sandwich on this list is just bread and butter with ambition. This was the foundation. America was built on it, daily, for generations. Try one, just one. Melt peanut butter over a burger and see if Sedalia was wrong. Batter a grilled cheese and fry it. Spread butter to the edges of 2 slices of bread. Add a pinch of salt and eat it slowly. Then come back and tell me the drive-thru serves anything better. Drop the one you are trying in the comments. I want to know if the goober burger gets more love than the steamed cheeseburger. And I want to know if anyone's grandmother still makes Benedictine. These sandwiches built this country. The least we can do is remember their names.